Hello, everyone. Welcome to week one of the I Was Just Wondering podcast with Ethan. Thank you guys for listening. Look, I'll just get started by saying that, obviously I had a previous podcast that I did with one of my mates, Brock, the No One Asked podcast. And I just want everyone who's listening to this to know that I didn't start this one because we had some sort of beef or anything. Like, we're still really close, and No One Asked will definitely be back. Probably, I'm not really sure. We haven't really set a time on it, but it will most definitely be back at some point this year. So if you're still craving, that sort of podcast between me and Brock, it'll definitely be back. So don't worry about that. But yeah, really, I just wanted to start this one to, really, I want to interview people and I want to talk to people. I want to talk to different people. I want to get different perspectives. One of the things I've learned recently, particularly, 2019 was a really shit year for me. Just starting out the block's pretty heavy, but 2019 was a really big year because I did a lot of learning and a lot of, self-reflection. And a lot of that come in the last 3 months of the year. So I haven't really had a chance to sort of decompress to sound like some sort of Tumblr girl. I haven't had a chance to decompress with anyone like properly yet. So I've just done a lot of and a lot of learning, and I want to see what some other people have learned over the past couple of years because, I only finished school 3 years ago, so I haven't had a big chance to learn anything. And really with this podcast, I just want to interview people, want to get their perspectives on life. I don't want to just have a sports podcast because it's ironic because this first episode is going to be a lot about rugby and it's going to be a lot about some other stuff. But I just want to have something where I can sort of, maybe every couple of weeks I do an interview with someone and it's just completely not like set into a thing, if that makes sense. I don't know if it's going to be hard to build fans off that sort of content. I really don't. I don't think there's really a podcast like that, but, I sort of just want to get to the point where, I'm talking about what I want to talk about on the week, and look, if you're here, you're here. I thank you everyone for listening, and welcome to my room. Pretty dingy setup, but I haven't got hella bank. But look, yeah, thank you for joining me. I'll probably will outline more of what the podcast name is a bit later in the episode, but if that made sense, then it made sense. But I guess, let's kick things off. I just said I don't really want to do a sports podcast, but let's kick things off talking about the Queensland Reds. They're not back. I don't want to say they're back, but I definitely think that the Queensland Reds have made massive improvements from last year, and I really didn't expect it at all. I mean, look, they're 1-4, but you look at their losses, 3 of them have been by, 10, 13 points max. And their one big loss was a complete second half screw around in Argentina, which often happens to Australian teams. Not making an excuse, but, really that game on Saturday night that they played against the Sharks that they lost 33-23, lost by 10 points. It was a really good performance. And I think it's starting to show that finally after 3 years, Brad Thorne has finally got what he wants out of this squad. And, it's impressive because it's still a very young team. And it is actually this year, it's one of the youngest teams in Super Rugby and it's genuinely a young team. It's not just like, oh, look, the squad average is this, but then we still have old players. Like there's not a lot of experienced players playing in this Queensland Red squad. I think the most experienced probably is James O'Connor. There's a couple of Teniela Tupou's got a couple of caps, but he's still like mid-20s. There's a lot of young boys in this team. And really, the most impressive thing for me is that they seem to care this year. They all genuinely seem to care. Like they're putting in effort and they're just hitting harder. They want to execute better. Their failures and letdowns seem to hurt more. And I don't know whether that's been a whole rugby thing, with the appointment of Dave Rennie and, Scott Johnson and stuff coming in and saying like, look, the slate's clean. Whoever's good enough is making the Wallabies this year. But obviously it's flowed down to the Reds. And I really think, Thorny's finally got his grips on the squad. He's got a young, impressionable squad that he's putting the right sort of, attitude into, and it's finally working. But I guess it's just the most impressive thing is that their pods don't seem to just be, let's run or let's get it to Samu Kerevi as quick as we can this year. Harry Wilson is a massive factor for the Reds this year. He's, carrying the ball through the line. Well, he's a young number 8. He's been playing for the Reds, come through the under-20 system. I think last year he might have played or the year before. But, he's amazing. Like he's got ball handling. He's got footwork into contact. He's agile in contact. He can offload through contact. He's really impressed me so far this year. And just he's really stepped up as a leader. Like the back row of the Reds has really stepped up this year. You know, Liam Wright, their captain, he's still pretty young. And then I can't remember who they're playing at number 6 right now, but, you know, they're all really young and they're all really stepping up, carrying the ball hard, looking to offload into contact, offloading into, at, and through contact, which is impressive. And it's really paying off. But the problem is, you know, and then obviously, you know, Harry Wilson has been impressive. And then you look at the backs too. I think Hamish Stewart has really impressed me. He was really, this was going to be, if he had been playing number 10 this year, this was going to be his last year at the Reds. He just wasn't cut as a Super Rugby 10. But I think they've moved him to 12 and he's now a ball handling 12. He's, you know, what used to happen with Hamish Stewart was that the game I think was going too quickly for him and he'd panic at 10 and always duck in. So he'd have weapons outside him like Karevi, Pataya, Fairway Sortia, the same weapons that are still in place this year, bar Karevi, of course. And he'd just panic and crash the ball and then the Reds would do nothing with their back line and then the forwards are constantly working, worn down by 60 minutes and then the Reds concede, you know, 2 or 3 late. Which would put them behind in games. But Hamish has moved to 12, which means now he is honestly an option as a ball runner. If he chooses, he can just take it, and that's what he's been doing. And he's also been used out the back. He's got more space to think now too at 12. He's got, you know, that extra 2 or 3 meters behind O'Connor, and he can just choose. He's got more space, more freedom, and it's definitely clicking. So Harry Wilson and Hamish Stewart have been the most impressive for the Reds this year. But I just think the thing that's letting them down is, you know, I'm saying, you know, youth is the best thing for their starting team, but it's their bench and the use of their bench, the lack of experience off the bench. And, you know, just their number 9, their reserve number 9 that they've been running with recently, Scott Mahalo, I really think, you know, just against the Sunwolves, he really slowed down the attack. And the Reds have been operating this year on a really like fast pick and drive, like let's get going. Let's hit a lot of fast crash balls and then run off the defense not being set properly. And, you know, they're exploiting gaps. They've got really good ball runners in the forwards and their backs. James O'Connor, Hamish Stewart, Hunter Pasami. They're all choosing really good lines. And just with a staggered, broken defense, it's working really well. But the thing is, like, when their reserve number 9, Scott Mahalo, comes on and slows right down the play, the defense is getting set and they're just eating up everything the Reds are doing because the Reds aren't doing anything majorly complex. And that's the problem, is when it slows down and Tate McDermott goes off and they're, you know, the defense is able to set and read and know what they're doing, then the Reds are just getting mauled. And that's probably the most disappointing part this year. And it cost them the game. I think, you know, it was a factor of James O'Connor going off just after halftime or at halftime with an ankle injury. And hopefully that's not too bad. There hasn't been any news released on that yet, but, you know, ankle sprain. James O'Connor going off and, you know, the Reds losing their centre direction for 10 minutes. And then, you know, Scott Mahalo coming on for the last 20. I hate to single out a player, but I really feel like the bench let the Reds down on the weekend. And, you know, they conceded 2 converted tries late in the match. And then got one back like in the 87th minute. Like the game went 7 minutes over time. So it made the scoreboard look a bit better. But really the Reds got beat when their bench come on. And that's definitely something they've got to change. Happened against the Sunwolves. They were completely running over the Sunwolves. The bench come on and their run over the Sunwolves completely slowed down. And, you know, they're going to face the Crusaders this week, which is going to be a massive challenge. And, you know, if the Reds starters are fighting and sticking it to the Crusaders and then the bench comes on, I really feel like it's going to be a mauling, but I hope it's not. And look, yeah, that's it really. Like the Reds just their bench has to step up. Like their starters are definitely a finals team right now, but their bench just has to step up and be able to carry through that platform. And look, James O'Connor is a player I really want to single out. I can't give enough praise to this dude. You know, when he first come back to the Reds, I was a bit skeptical. When he first come back to Australian rugby, I was skeptical. I thought, you know, he's been off in France, in England, in all these other places for the past 3 years. And, you know, players who go over and come back don't tend to come back as good. They come back more experienced, more rounded, but they just don't seem to... They come back as really, really good Super Rugby players, but everyone that's been called up to the Wallabies from there has seemed to not be able to stick up to the pressure. And I think obviously James O'Connor completely proved that wrong. You know, he had a massive game in the All Blacks win last year in Perth, and now he's come back to the Reds. You know, we lose the Reds had they had an average first game against the Brumbies. And then I don't know whether it was their second game or their third game that they rung around some changes and moved James O'Connor to 10. But he has been electric since he got moved to 10. He seems to be making the right decision every time somehow. I can't explain it. It's like he knows when to carry. He knows when to pass. He knows when to throw the cutout. He knows when to throw the ball out the back. He knows when to, fake as if he's going to do it and then pop it back inside to the forwards. He's showing great leadership, on and off the field, really. And it's been super impressive. And I think, one of the most interesting things for me is that, look, I don't want to sound like too much of an idiot, but I feel like James O'Connor's spoken about how, when he left the Australian setup in 2013, after, because he come in as a young kid, he come in around, my age, 19, 20, into the Wallabies setup, straight into the Wallabies, playing electric in Super Rugby, everything in front of him. And then he sort of fell and his form dipped and he was floating in and out of the Wallabies, getting a lot of criticism from the public, made a few mistakes in the Wallabies setup, like off the field. And then on the field had a couple of very poor performances in 2013. I think he left 2014, went overseas. And, he spoke about how really that broke him. That really damaged him as a person and how, he went over there and he broke down his ego, did all these sort of therapy sessions over in Iceland and those sort of countries and really brought back down his ego and completely rebuilt himself as a human. And you see it a lot in his Instagram stories. He often posts, how his meditation routines and his everything else routines. And it's really, really interesting to see because, I've sort of gone through a similar thing. Like last year was a terrible year. I was a bit of an asshole and then everything, just the mat got pulled out on underneath me. And, having to break down your ego and be able to learn how to say you were a mistake because you thought you were up here is a very, very impressive. Like it's impressive to do because it's hard to do. And I know exactly what he's been through. And, just because of that, I have a lot of respect for James O'Connor, a lot of newfound respect for James O'Connor. And honestly, he'd be like, I'd love to get him on the show as a guest just to talk about that sort of experience. Because I think it is interesting when, someone not completely changes as a person, but just learns how to. One of the best traits in people is that someone who can say, yeah, I messed up, like stick their hand up. And I think for James O'Connor to be able to do that and say like, I can do this now and come back here and carve up is very, very impressive. So I have a lot of respect for B. James O'Connor. And, speaking about that interchangeability with moving Hamish from 10 to 12, I think the ball handling 12 is back in Australian rugby. And thankfully that's a really, really good thing because we look at the Kiwis the past couple of years and even the South Africans a little bit. The South Africans have had massive 12s. They just know what they want in their centres and they've stuck to it. Aussie rugby's sort of been flirting with like, do we go ball handling? Do we go a second 10? Do we do this? Do we do this? And there hasn't really been a structure set up from all through Super Rugby, but I definitely think that's changed this year. I think, obviously you look at the Reds, they're playing O'Connor and Hamish. That's 2 10s, but Hamish is more suited as a 12. He's performing out of his skin. Brumbies have been playing Lolesio and Ardie Savea, and Ardie Savea has really taken another step up this year. I don't know if he's Wallabies caliber yet. I think he's a really, really good super player, and he could become, a really, really, really good Super Rugby player. But like his ball handling and, his composure around the field has seemed to take a massive jump. And I think that's a good thing for Aussie rugby because you look at the Rebels, they've been running Matt Tamua and Bill Meeks, which is a really similar setup to the Reds running where they have a sort of, Bill Meeks could play 10. I think he played a bit of 10 over in England, but really he's a dead set inside centre and Tamua could play 10 or 12. But you have your ball running, able to ball run or able to tackle 10, and then your 12 outside of him. And that was a massive factor in their win over the Highlanders on the weekend. But then, you look at the Tars, they're running Will Harrison, probably with Carmichael Hunt. I haven't really caught too many Tars games, so if that's wrong, please call me out. But yeah, it's just the fact that Aussie rugby now has a lot of number 10s who can tackle, who can defend, who can do everything. And then a number 12 who's got that ball playing ability and it's all across the park, which means that when we get to the Wallabies time, it's going to be so much easier for Dave Rennie to pick a squad, not just pick, his 10-12 combination, but to pick a squad. And I think that's a really, really good thing for Australian rugby. And yeah, look, I haven't been able to catch much Super Rugby. I don't know why it started so early. The promotion of it was terrible. I think particularly here in Australia, we're going through a lot of shit with Fox Sports right now or the News Corp group. I think I'll go into that a bit later. But look, just starting the new test rugby window come in from World Rugby, and basically the June tests got moved to July. So now they're starting Super Rugby earlier and trying to finish it earlier so that way, our international teams don't have to stop halfway through the season. Still the Super Rugby players, put them in a camp, play internationals, and then send them back to Super Rugby for a week. It was a bit pointless. Really, you'd find that the Super Rugby, the Wallabies players might go off, come back, and then their head's already in, well, look, this is the way the trend's gone that people picked in June get played in November. So their head sort of goes, oh, I don't really need to care. I'll be in the November squad. And, it sort of just put them in a bad mentality. And then they come back. The correlation wasn't there because you have players who go from playing Super Rugby week in, week out to playing no footy for like 4 weeks. You have Wallabies players who, think it just was a bad setup. But they started Super Rugby early and they're finishing it earlier to get it done before all the mid-season internationals. And I'm a fan of it. I really am. But the promotion of it was terrible. They really needed to say that Super Rugby started earlier and really get it down people's throats because I wasn't really ready for footy in early February. Like that's when it started. We're up to round 5 or 6 now. Like a month ago, that's February. Like footy in 30-degree weather is not a thing and it shouldn't be a thing. But look, it's here. It's here. I'm going to get, I'm going to watch some film, see what I can pick up from the rest of the Super Rugby games. I won't go too much into it now. I think the Highlanders and the Bulls have had pretty poor starts to the season. Sunwolves are getting kicked out of the comp, so they don't care. All their good players left, and their team is now terrible, which it has honestly been the past couple of years anyway. Look, I'll get into some film. This week's episode, we'll probably do a proper breakdown. But really, that's just what I wanted to say. Super Rugby started early. They probably shouldn't have, but it makes sense. And then it's going to finish earlier. But look, I think, let's get into that promotion stuff now with Fox. So right now, there is a new agreement being negotiated to start from 2021. And the 2021 deal is going to be, it's the TV deal with what each nation, Australia, New Zealand, South Africa, what we get in our, collective bargaining agreement, like how much money Super Rugby makes. And New Zealand signed off on it. South Africa signed off on it. They're waiting for us because Rugby Australia has obviously wanted more freedom. I think they're pushing to get it back on free to air and not hid behind the Fox Sports payroll, which is definitely essential if the game genuinely wants to grow. Regardless of how much cash Fox Sports can throw at us, it's eyeballs that matters. It's eyeballs and good performances that matter. You often see Super Rugby crowds now for Australian games of 5,000, 10,000 people. And look, the results aren't there right now, but the Brumbies have often, there's 2 professional rugby teams two professional sports teams that matter, in my opinion, in Canberra. There's the Brumbies and the Raiders. The Raiders sell out crowds, and yet the Brumbies get 5,000, 10,000, and they're at the top of the comp. And they were at the top of the comp last year and they were struggling for numbers. They completely revamped their game day experience and their numbers are still struggling. Now, obviously, it's multiple factors, but the fact that the eyes aren't there for free-to-air TV is definitely hurting Aussie rugby, and it has been for years. Excuse me. And I think, the biggest thing is we need to get a co-deal where we have, even if it's like what the NRL does, where, Fox Sports gets Super Saturday, and then there's the game in the late afternoon on a Sunday is on 9. The early game is on Fox Sports, and Friday games, I think they're 1-1. I'm pretty sure, but yeah, you just need that exposure. We need that primetime games in Australia on free to air channels in Australia. Like we can't keep acting like the Fox Sports thing is good because it's not. Like we're going down and. This is the thing. Aussie Rugby's taken its tender, so we're trying to see what bids we can get in for it. And Fox Sports is obviously angry because they, immediately offered us a thing to re-sign to. We declined it, took them to tender, so we're taking in other offers, and Fox Sports is now essentially, pulling the wool over everyone's eyes on rugby. They're, advertising it low on their pages. It's all about NRL, all about motorsport. I come home from the Reds beating the Sunwolves 64-5 after they were on a 3-game losing streak. And on every single News Corp channel, I'm talking Sky News, Sky Sports News, the Fox Sports News channel, they had motorsport right? V8s, look, if you're a fan, you're a fan. But they had motorsports as the headliner. They had rugby league trial matches, and then they had basketball or something as a third, and then they mentioned the Reds while they were going to an ad break in 30 seconds. Now look, it's pretty clear that that Fox Sports, is trying to undermine Australia rugby right now, and they're trying to put us in a hole. And I really don't understand it, because the less exposure they give us, the less people are going to come out. And obviously, look, they're just trying to lowball Australian rugby because we didn't accept their bid. But it just is going to hurt their product in the long term. What are they going to do? The moment that Australian rugby re-signs next year, they're just going to completely boost everything up again. Sport is such a thing where it takes years and years to build a following and years of good performances to sustain it. And even the slightest dip can send people away. And what Fox Sports is doing is completely stupid. And I really, really hate it. What they're doing is ridiculous. I hope, fuck Fox Sports, honestly. But look, the biggest issue, and, just completely, that's it. I'm not mentioning it again until we get some more news on it. But, Super Rugby, I might actually take a break. I'm going to take a break. I'm going to slow down, take a few steps, and then I will be right back, guys. All right, guys. Welcome back. Took my break. Had a drink of water. It'll be like 1 second for you guys, but regardless, look, we need to have a genuine discussion about one of the biggest issues in rugby right now across the whole world. And really, it's been in rugby for a couple of years now, and I'm surprised, World Rugby and all the other governing bodies haven't done anything about it. And that is defensive player safety at the breakdown is at the worst level it has ever been at. And I'm talking about the 80s, where you could literally stomp on people and kick them out of the ruck. The 90s, where it was a little bit more aggressive, where it was aggressive still, all the way through the 2000s, all the way through the 2010s. It is at its lowest point right now. And we've seen that on the weekend, or on Friday afternoon, in the Highlanders Rebels game, when Highlanders captain James Lantis suffered a gruesome, terrible injury to his ankle. Look, if you haven't seen it, I'll probably roll the clip right now. You can have a look at it. But you can just see how gruesome that is. And you can see the cause of it. If you watch, there's a Rebels player coming in from the front, clearing out the ball. And then you notice another Rebels player coming in. I don't think he's coming in all the way from the side, but he's definitely coming in from an angle. And when those two hit at the same time, one of them coming in like this and the other one coming in straight, they fold Lanty's back onto his leg. And obviously his leg I think it's stuck underneath the player. I think that's often the thing that happens when you're trying to peel for the ball. And, he gets twisted over and snaps his ankle. And look, this is the thing right now. World Rugby has tried to make rugby a more flowing game over multiple years. Since I think the 2015 World Cup, there's almost been rules every single year that have directly been stated as World Rugby trying to make a genuine change to make the game more open. Because, the 2015 World Cup was a massive explosion of points scored at World Cups. And, everyone loved it. I think it was one of the most viewed World Cups television rights ways in, a long time. And, World Rugby since then has said, well, obviously, tries get people entertained. Let's try and make the game more free-flowing. So they've really put a stinger on defensive pilfering and turning the ball over defensively at the breakdown. And it's got to the point now where, the referees have to watch the defensive guy, with falcon eyes, and they have to make sure he's doing everything right, because that's where all the penalties are now. So you can have situations now where you have, Rebels players or offensive players coming in from the side and completely taking people out. I've seen it in a couple of clips in Six Nations, and Ben Ryan, who's the ex-Fiji Sevens, who won the Fiji Sevens gold medal with them in the Olympics in 2016, he's obviously an avid talker about this issue on his Twitter page. And you see, games where literally the referee will be on this side of the ruck, right? On this side. And then, you'll have a guy from the offensive team come in from this side and clean out the defensive guy from the side and roll him over onto his back in the same sort of position that James Lanty's got rolled. And it's a wonder there hasn't been more injuries. There's genuinely been gruesome injuries happen from these clean-out techniques that are now allowed, because the refs have to watch that defensive guy so much. And, I think it definitely affected Poey when he started playing after the 2015 World Cup. I think it was really 2017 when it really started to roll around. And the past 2 years of Super Rugby, it's really been evident, particularly with Poe and everyone else that was a good pilferer, or they're still good pilferers, but like a really good pilferer before then, is like it's just completely compromised defensive player safety at the Rock. And I think, Super Rugby or World Rugby has to do something about it, because you just can't have a situation where, rugby is meant to be a competition. It's meant to be a whole competition for the 80 minutes. And you can't have a situation where you get, defensive players who are trying to do their best in the sport, putting themselves in a position of danger that really shouldn't be a position of danger. Like, it just frustrates me. And we've seen it happen. We've seen the worst case scenario of it happen. James Lantis is out for the season now, Highlander's captain. And it's a poor situation, and it's going to keep happening unless there's genuine change and a rollback of the rules so that defensive players have more leeway at the breakdown. But I guess we just wait and see. And I want to talk some news coming out today. NRL Expansion Team, complete switch off the footy. I'll do some film review and we'll get into it. But, NRL has heavily hinted that the next NRL Expansion Team will be a second Brisbane team possibly, and that the decision will be made in the next 3 years. And, I've seen what happens with Super Rugby when you expand, and I like it because, it's a new team. It's a new thing. It's, everyone loves a new thing. But it becomes to the point where you look at even just the Queensland teams right now. Do Queensland Rugby League have the talent to support it? And I'm going to say yes. I think they do. I think there is enough talent throughout the league. And, you see this with transfers all the time. I think there is enough talent and enough people through the league to, get decent enough players playing on this team. The issue is there enough coaches at an NRL level and enough executives that'll move to this team to actually get it running off the ground? Because we've seen what happens with the Titans, and, I'm not going to single anyone out. I don't know the full story. I'm just talking about this because it come up in the news today. But the Titans have been terrible for a very long time. I remember the first season, they had a couple of good players. They bring in marquee players all the time. The marquee players don't perform. They go somewhere else and exceed expectations. And I think it's because you have to think about not, do we have the player quantity to do this? Do we have the fan interest? It's, do you have the coaches and management to do this? Because this is a new team. It's a completely different world. There's going to be way more work to do from startup than I think there has ever been before for new franchises. And you're going to need an experienced NRL coach to guide the players and management through it. And you're going to have management that's at the same level as the coach in terms of experience, and they work in unison to promote this new team through. So I think there's definitely not a talent issue. You can find talent in the NRL, right? If you can stop the teaming up, the super teams that are happening right now in the NRL, in my opinion, I think you can find the talent. It's, are you going to have the coaches and the management to do it? And I don't know if the NRL or any other sport right now does for that matter. There's not a lot of people, there's not a lot of people, and a lot of it is hit and miss, and that's sport. It's hit and miss. And you can't just say, oh, look, we got fan interest, we got the players, this is going to work, because it's not. You look at the Titans right now, they got Jai Arrow, they had Tyrone Peachy, they've had, there's other players that they've had. I'm not really a big Titans fan, so I don't know. I apologize. But, they've had all the players, and they've had, a genuine, decent, for a growing young franchise team, they've had the interest from the fans, but for some reason they're not succeeding. And it's got to be the coaches and management. And that's going to be the biggest thing for this new team that comes into the NRL is, can you find the coaches and the management? And, I guess that sort of brings me while I'm on the NRL team, expansion team. Maybe they sign Ardie Savea. That was very big news coming out from Ardie talking on another podcast that, he would be open to a switch. He did say the Warriors and the Roosters, I believe. Or maybe it was the Storm and the Roosters, one of the two. He basically just wants to go to a championship team, pull a Sonny Bill Williams. But this would be massive. Firstly, there's been a lot of exodus in New Zealand rugby recently, like a lot. Like, if players aren't making the All Black squad, and Ardie Savea is making the All Black squad, which is even a bigger thing, but they just leave now. And, you're talking about, and no one notices it because there's that coaches and management in New Zealand that just smooths over all the issues, and the new players come in and have no problems. But you're talking about a nation that, if players aren't making the highest league, sometimes they're going overseas. We've seen it with Aaron Cruden when he didn't make the 2015 squad. I think he signed the year after. you know, Richie Mwanga, I'm pretty sure he left, I think. You know, it's just, this is another sort of a thorn in the side. It's not a big issue for New Zealand, but they keep losing players for some reason. And there's no real definitive, they're winning everything. Maybe that's it. Maybe they're just bored. Maybe he wants a new challenge. Because I think if he goes, he's basically going to come back before the next World Cup, I'm pretty sure. So he's going to go play the League World Cup, probably for Samoa or something. And then, you know, maybe switch over the next league and play for New Zealand, the New Zealand League team, which you can't do in rugby right now. And maybe that's just what he wants. Maybe he wants a new challenge. But look, if League gets Ardie Savea, that's massive because he's an athlete, first and foremost. He's an athlete, an exceptional flanker, a great rugby player. Like, there's not many people that get that sort of praise. Like, he is super athlete. He's quick. He's nimble. He's light on his feet for a 6'3", like 120 kilo guy. You know, he's a great flanker. He can peel for the ball. He hits hard as shit. He just does everything a flanker needs to do. And he's a great rugby player. He's got good footwork, you know, great offloading ability. He would genuinely eat up at League. I don't know where he'd play. I'm probably going to say whoever signs him would probably play him in the forwards. And, you know, he's really, I think his best comparison right now is probably he's like a super fit Andrew Fafita. Like Andrew Fafita in his prime, maybe 2016 when he was doing really good for the Blues. Like, he's got that ball handling ability, the footwork, the size. Like, I really feel like he would be special in League, and I'd love to see it. But yeah, that'll be interesting. And I guess, you know, last thing, NRL trial match news. Haven't really been following it because I've been trying to catch up on Super Rugby. But look, I did see the Roosters got beat 58-0 by the Knights, and I did see that the Rabbitohs beat the Dragons, in the Charity Shield game, and that the Titans beat the Broncos somehow, which I was just slandering the Titans before. I apologize. They did beat the Bronx. But look, I haven't really been able to follow it. You know, it's just, life's been a bit hectic at the moment, so it's a bit hard to even watch the rugby, and then, you know, League on top. But look, this is where I want to reach out to people. This is the sort of thing I want to talk about. If you're a League fan and you want to get your opinions across about your team, I know the season starts next week. I'll be recording another podcast probably later this week, maybe Saturday, Sunday, maybe Monday even at the latest. So if you want to preview your team's season and send it into the I Was Just Wondering Instagram page, or, you know, the I Was Just Wondering email, I'll have all the links available basically everywhere. You can, you know, leave a comment on the YouTube channel. You know, I've already said the Instagram page, but look, if you want to preview your thing, send me in an audio clip, send me in something. I'll play it. I'll react to it, you know. But if you want to preview the Bronx season or the Eels season or the Knights season or the Roosters season or anything, a massive help for me. It means I have to do less work. But I want to get, you know, people who I think are experts, quote unquote, talking about these things. And I'm not saying like, oh, I want to go get the Fox Sports commentators. Like, I genuinely want, like, if you're my mate, or even if you're not my mate, if you're listening to this thing and you want to give your opinion on how you think your NRL team's going to go this season, please hit me up. I would love to hear it. I would genuinely love to hear it. And, you know, I'll play the audio on the podcast. I'll read your thoughts on the podcast. Just, yeah, get in touch. I'd love to hear it. But I guess that's it. Week 1. Done. You know, real short one. Sorry to not be looking at the camera. I want to see how long. 35 minutes. So a real short one. So, yeah, this is sort of what I want to be at. It's sort of want to be half an hour to 45 minutes, you know, try and get it out 6 o'clock Sunday, if not early Monday morning, so that it's there for you guys for the new week. And basically, yeah, just record on a Sunday so that I can get all the Super Rugby games sort of analysed if I want to go that path. But yeah, I want to get people on here, man. I want to interview people. If you've got any suggestions on anyone who should interview, or if you want to be interviewed on this, let me know. Because I genuinely just want to have conversations with people on this. Like, I don't want to be too serious. You know, I do want to get into some, if I do some analysis of rugby, I do want to be a little bit serious because, you know, I'm back playing club footy now. After 2 years of coaching, I've gone back on, I'm playing footy again and I'm loving it, man. So yeah, that's why I sort of wanted to do this podcast on footy, but that's not going to be every week. You know, some weeks I might just get a mate on and goof off. And yeah, I don't know if it's really going to take off. That's not the plan. I just sort of want to get my thoughts out there. I want to get other people's thoughts out there. I want to give everyone a platform to speak because I think everyone should have a platform to speak. Like, I don't want to be some self-righteous dickhead, but yeah, like you can learn so much from seeing how someone else thinks about things. Like, even just a 2-minute chat to someone, you can learn a completely different perspective on everything. And that's one of the big lessons I learned late last year. So yeah, I want to get you on, man. Anyone. Yeah, free clout. Yeah. Oh, that was terrible. But yeah, no, just really want to talk to people, man. So if you want to be interviewed, trials will be this week. Send me in your best one-liner and answer this question. Do you brush your teeth before bed or not? So if you can answer that question and send in a clip of you, I will put you into the list of people to interview for the podcast. I got a few people. I got a goal. Got James O'Connor, David Powie, big lofty dreams, but let's set them here on the first episode. Let's get into it. But yeah, thanks for listening, guys. I hope you enjoyed. Yeah. Peace.